We got to do that. We should add this segment from like Wayne's World where Garth screws it up or whatever. Their homie, the rock and roll. 3, 2.
That's how we should start the show every time.
Yeah. What up, E? What are you saying? Your Alma learned to count, huh?
Alma can count to 10.
What?
It's wild.
She can almost get her on the show.
She can almost say the ABC song, and she can count to 10.
What?
They grow up so fast.
Can we? Can she premiere that live on Schmoozing?
We can do our intro. Often she'll just start at 4. She'll be like 4, 5, 6, 7.
Then we like, okay, what do we do now? That's great.
Well.
What's going on, buddy?
We're back.
I feel like it's been so long. I mean, we went like almost 40 weeks. Is that true? Is that fake news?
How many weeks we schmoozed? I don't know. We went from May until we went like 8 months. 8 times 4 is 30. Yeah, 32, 35 maybe 30 something schmoozes.
I mean,
in 2020.
I got to see if I remember how to schmooze.
It's been 3 weeks. It's been 3 weeks. We took off. There's better light. See, I forgot how to turn on my light. This is much better now.
Where's your plant, dude?
It's kind of like it's back there, but it's a little scraggly. I lost a couple leaves.
Oh no.
I haven't been. This is my like office where I work, and this is like I was off from school, so like holiday time was like for real vacation. It's so funny being back in school because you actually get a winter break.
Oh,
so
good old school.
I took 2 weeks doing nothing, no emails, no phones. I mean, a little bit of those things, but mostly just hanging out with friends and watching television and drinking and eating. It's pretty awesome.
No, the other things. That's what you do when you skip school, usually. All the other things.
Yeah.
I don't think people don't skip grad school, do they?
I mean, what's the point, right? You're there because you want to be there.
Ditching at homeroom or whatever.
I did skip one class. There was one day.
Are you kidding?
One day I was just like, I can't do this.
You'll never change
right now. I can't. Playing hooky.
Which class was it?
It was my my policy, my environmental policy class.
Holy.
Sometimes there's just a lot of talking in that class, and I was just...
You're like, I'm out of here. Wait, but how many? There's not so many people in your grade though, right?
There's 16 of us in the program.
Oh, okay. Because do they like attend like Goldstein? Goldstein.
I mean, once again, it's like your choice not to go. We're adults now. It's not like being in high school.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
How was your break?
I mean, it was good. It's weird. I'm not comfortable traveling, so I didn't get to see fam, and that's tough, man. It was tough. But weather-wise, it's cool down here, and we got to start this. Our Twitch channel was so much fun. New Year's was great.
Yes,
it was a great start. And then I was getting ready. Also, I did another art installation over the weekend at a farm in the Redlands called Aloha Farms, and basically small group of liberal women who run this farm and do a CSA. Is that what it's called? Farm share.
Yeah.
And they got all types of stuff growing there, but also throw in the whole tropical twist. So there's papaya trees and huge mame trees and all types of stuff, banana trees, but they've got chickens and blah, blah, blah. But the cool feature is somebody there has a architectural background. And so they know how to work with CAD, and they designed this whole lagoon area with pathways made of like coral rock. And then they have a big coral amphitheater. Next time you come down here, I got to bring you down there.
Wow.
The amphitheater is super cool, and it would be a great place for performance and art. And they're supporters of the arts, so a bunch of local artists, including Natasha, including Beatrice Chichamovitz, who came on the show, who does the coral art and activism, marine activism. She showed as well, and some other guys. A guy named Magnus, who's a big name down here in Miami art scene. Lauren Shapiro's another. another name. And then I got invited to do my first solo sound installation. So they put me in this shack with this broken machinery. They're like, "Here, you can go over there." And I was like, "Oh, it's perfect. It looks weird." And I just hid some speakers up pointing at the roof, and I made a sound piece. I'll put together something we can listen on the show sometime if you want. But yeah, that was fun. So that's where I was this weekend, and that sort of was what I feel like things were like culminating towards. But that was cool. I'm ready for a couple days off.
Man, yeah, no, it's like nonstop, dude. I mean, like that was what's good about was having some time off. Was just like I feel a bit recharged. But then like so much is like, you know, there's so much to do in January. I have the month off from school, so it's like get everything in, get streaming, get comfortable with it, like streaming, you know, 3-4 times a week on our Twitch channel, since that's like, you know, one big thing we're doing this year. Soul Clap Music here on Twitch for all those that don't know. And you know, all these other projects I'm trying to just kind of work on, you know, before I get back for my second semester of school. So there's that, and then there's all the fucking like all the craziness happening in the world, you know? Like I mean, can I throw one more of our craziness on there?
Yeah. We got an album that's just starting to drop.
Dude, we just
January.
Announced today. Yes. New Soul Clap album coming on Earth Day 2021.
Yep.
April 22nd.
That's right. But our first there's going to be 3 EPs leading up to the full album, which we're calling WTF, World Transformation Force. So our EPs are going to be the World EP, Transformation EP, Force EP, and the World EP drops Friday.
Yep.
Bop.
Yep.
This has been in the making for a long time. We work with Lee Curtis to help us take our demo ideas and produce them. Got some great team.
And it's coming out on Fool's Gold, so this is exciting.
Fool's Gold.
It's our first time not independent really releasing our album. We actually are on another label, so that's cool. Our third album, and we got signed, yo.
We got signed. Yo, shout out to Mixmag. I just saw you in the chat room using our new emotes. Cleo, what up? I see you wearing we got emotes. That's 2021. We got emotes.
Yes. We got emotes. Yeah, so I mean, Twitch is fun. It's gonna be great. It's great to have just like a reason to be going through music again. We were talking about this before the show, but I feel like that's amazing. Digging on Bandcamp, digging through promos, buying some vinyls again. You know, it's nice to be committed to this DJ streaming thing and excited about it. So that's cool.
Totally.
But you know what we haven't done yet?
What's that?
We haven't told them about our guest. We got Michelle Lhooq today on the show. Michelle is an independent journalist out on the West Coast. She started out on writing about music at thump.com or whatever Thump's website was, but that was Vice's electronic music site from the 2010s, back at the last decade. We connected via that, but then she went independent and has been writing about weed and psychedelics, and over the summer about the pandemic and politics and autonomous zones. So very excited to have Michelle on. I've wanted to have her on for a while. So we'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about MAGA Burning Man, which we all know it's one of the craziest days of my life, probably of most of our lives, right?
That was nuts, man.
So we'll get deep on that later. There's so much to talk about, but let's run the intro and then we'll
run a
ting.
This is something special for you.
Schmoozing.
So that's it!
Long I see, bamboozle.
Schmoozing. Talk amongst yourselves.
Schmoozing.
So.
Are you ready? The show's about to start.
Dude, I got it. We could, right at the end of that intro, he goes, there's a kid already. Go, are you ready? We could put Alma there.
Go,
are you ready? Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yep.
Sweet. I'm gonna. She talks more. The possibilities are endless of having her talking about stuff. You know, actually, our friends Ahmed and Michelle got us this awesome little handmade sampler in a little wooden box. It's like super simple.
What?
You can just record a little sample. You can either have it on loop or trigger, and then you press the button and it plays the sample, and then you have pitch. So
Okay.
I'm just recording her saying something, hi, and then messing with it, hi, hi,
Oh
hi,
my
hi,
God.
hi, and she just loves. It's so much fun. She's like, wow.
She's sampling.
Yeah, she's already
That's great.
getting her involved.
I feel like I've seen those things before, but with the African thumb piano.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cleo's asking, what can she say? Like she's got the alphabet song pretty much down, and she can count to 10, and she's doing like 2-word sentences. So she's coming along.
Yeah, man. Crazy.
But all my credits on the samples. Yes, chat room. What is up? What is up, everybody on
What
Twitch?
up, chat room?
Everybody
What
on
up,
Rave the
Twitch?
Vote TV. Man, Twitch life, stream life. That's the new world we live in.
Yo, big shout out to Toki Monster for that recap show. It was so dope. And Val.
That was
Big up
was
the
great.
Val.
That was a great way to end the year.
That was a great way to end the year. We were cracking up. We were talking about aliens and more.
Yo, there's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
So much to talk about. Actually, something exciting. There's one thing I'm just reminded there was this really exciting thing I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
We are only a few days away from the UN ratifying the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons officially.
Whoa.
It bans the developing, testing, production, manufacture, acquisition, possession, or stockpiling, transfer, control, or receipt, or use or the threat of use, stationing, or deployment of nuclear weapons. On 22nd January, the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons will enter into force. It's amazing.
Wow.
So, there are positive things happening. Despite all the craziness, we are still moving in the right direction. We just got to keep pushing hard, not let up, and keep pushing in that direction on all fronts, because peace is what we want and peace is what we need.
Peace is what we need. And you know what? Thank you to everybody that supported and sent positive energy into these initiatives that we did with Rave the Vote in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And and then again in Atlanta. Thank you, everybody in Atlanta. This is incredible. We entered into this thing pretty nonpartisan. At least, that's the objective. But who the heck are we kidding? Like Eli and I are so liberal, it's crazy. We're both Jewish guys from New England. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, but the point is, this is great. We ended up, taking all three positions, and it feels good.
Yeah. So 2021 is the year we keep, like I said, we keep pushing. So a lot more work to do around sustainability and climate change, especially in our dance music world, as things start rolling out again with parties, and also a lot to do around representation and equity and showcasing the history and the people who made this platform of dance music and electronic music that we are able to eat off of. So let's not forget, it's time to keep working in 2021. Let's maybe get to some music before and bring Michelle in.
Let's do that Bandcamp Song of the Week.
Bandcamp Song of the Week. Does Mike Legend have the Bandcamp Song of the Week? Does he have it? No, he doesn't have the intro.
Oh, Mike, there's an intro we did. I got to holler at Chris and get that intro.
Yeah.
But it basically is, we had James Earl Jones come into the studio and record.
The Bandcamp Song of the Week.
Too soon. Of course Mike had it. Mike's the legend.
What?
Shout out to our producer, Mike the Legend.
Mike the Ledge.
So this is on one of the best labels of the last few years, 2000 Black, named after that Roy Ayers and Fela Kuti song. And it is incredible. It is I'm just totally blanking on
It's music.
It's homie it's Dago from Four Heroes label. He was originally part of Four Heroes, started Reinforced Records, one of the drum and bass originators. Then For Hero, he's formed, and now he's running 2000 Black for the last however many years, and it just gets better and better, honestly, and it's been getting a lot of credit for good reason. It is live electronic music with some of the best players in the UK, so brings in jazz and funk and all kinds of different dopeness, and this is a perfect example. Kadai, Tatham, and a few of the other resonant musicians from the label are on this one. Let's check it out. Blessings of Salvation.
Nice setup.
No, it's just cutting out, huh? Hey. Well, we were cut short. It's all good. Looks like Bandcamp maybe crashed. Okay.
Technical difficulties.
If you're interested, 2000black.bandcamp.com. The reason we do the Bandcamp song of the week is because Bandcamp is the best way to support independent labels and artists, especially on Bandcamp Fridays. There's no Bandcamp Friday in January, but the first Friday of February is the next Bandcamp Friday. We love you, Bandcamp.
We love Bandcamp. Both of us also coincidentally stayed up late buying a bunch of music on Bandcamp.
Yes.
So go figure. So watch out, streams.
We should maybe
Watch
try
out, internet.
try some Track Source songs of the week too. We got to shout out our boys at Track Source too. I got love for Track Source.
I got love for Track Source.
Let's do that. Let's do that too. Let's maybe bring some of those in.
Let's get Brian on the show.
Yo, that's a great idea.
Right? Talk about all them sulfuric ting.
Another great place to buy music, tracksource.com.
Yep.
But without further ado, should we bring in our guest?
I'd love it.
Okay. Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, what's up, guys?
What's going on? Oh, you know what? You just revolutionized the show because in your title down under your name there in the window, you put an Instagram handle.
Genius.
Hello, I've been putting my name like a dingling for 7-8 months.
Genius.
You just came on and in one swoop you changed the game. Change that game.
What is identity anymore?
That was brilliant. Cool.
Where are you
welcome.
at, Michelle? Tell us where you're beaming in from.
I am in Hollywood, Los Angeles, baby. Live in the heart of LA.
That's like a proper way of introducing it. Hollywood, Los Angeles.
Hollyweird.
Hollyweed.
Hollyweed.
Nice.
Damn. All right, cool.
You took it to the next level from Hollyweird to Hollyweed. Speaking of Hollyweird, I have a friend who's living in Santa Monica right now and was basically like, it's like living in a David Lynch movie because no one's on the streets. It's like weird, pandemic, alternate reality, but it feels like David Lynch because that's like his stomping grounds for all so many of his movies. So that was I was like, damn, we actually finally reached David Lynch reality.
Totally. And I just saw someone in your chat talk about how they changed the Hollywood sign to the Hollyweed sign. That's so epic, and I definitely saw that, and I know the guy who did it.
Wait a minute, this was like an art installation?
Yeah, this like graffiti dude basically just like climbed up there, and usually they have like crazy alarms with like literally they'll send like a SWAT team if you try and like deface it. But I don't know how this guy did it. He basically like managed to just like change it overnight. And
Mike, producer Mike, can you find a picture of this so we can bring it up and show this on the screen? We gotta share this.
Yo, that's actually so brilliant. You got it. Like, hats off to graffiti dudes for being the stealthiest and dudettes. Graffiti folk, so stealthy. How do you so brave?
I know, I was really obsessed with him, and I actually hit him up and asked him to do the art for my weed rave because I was like, "You're a legend. Like, I need you to like make the decor for my party."
Art? Wait a minute.
So his name is Zachary Cole Fernandez, and he was arrested for this. He was booked on a misdemeanor trespassing charge and then released on bail. So that's only a misdemeanor. Well worth it. Well worth it to get your name associated with doing this. I mean
okay, so is it painted over on the O's to turn them in and then E's, or did he cut it?
It looks like flags.
Yeah.
Wow.
He flagged it. Oh my gosh. Wow. That is so next level. I love it. Like, you don't even have to like marijuana at all to appreciate this level of just genius.
This level of skill at vandalism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Maybe someone could turn the Trump into like dump
every time I'm leaving New York through Queens, and I pass the Trump golf course, I'm just reminded of how much I want to vandalize that sign there. So I will always wonder if
What would you do?
I don't know, but it's got to go. It's just so aggravating every
Gotta
time
be-
you see
be
it.
Clever with it.
Man.
Well, over the summer when I was in New York, I went to this protest by this activist group called Extinction Rebellion, and at the end, they climbed the globe outside of Trump Hotel in New York, and they poured blood all over it. So
Oh
that
my
was
gosh.
kind of crazy.
Man, we love Extinction Rebellion. They're the best. I mean, doing climate activism, climate protest with kind of like that British taking the piss attitude is pretty awesome.
Yeah, didn't they throw like a disco party in front of Buckingham Palace or something?
They did some they did some parties there. They had camped out in front of the British Museum last year or in 2019. I was there. I was supposed to DJ there, but they got shut down. I ended up DJing on the back of a rickshaw that someone was biking and powering by bike, and just like talking smack on the mic driving through central London, and playing protest music. So
That's amazing. I mean, I love the intersection of like protest and rave culture, and I guess that's what we're going to talk about today, right? Like,
yeah,
I think it's a really different vibe from a lot of the other protests that I went to over the summer that were, very like frontline, like, just like marching on the streets, and that's like a whole different vibe too. But I don't know, when you go to a protest that's also a party and there's like music in it, I just think it creates a really different sort of atmosphere.
Totally.
Music kind of like, it really does bring people together. I know that sounds kind of cliche, but when you play a song, like everyone is suddenly like locked into the same headspace. I think it focuses people and creates this instant sort of like communal vibe, as opposed to sometimes when you're at a street like march or something, there's a lot of different crazy things happening.
Hey, think of the power of the music of during the psychedelic rock era and folk music during the Vietnam era, and the power of those musicians and those songwriters, that those became anthems, talking about bringing people on the same wavelength.
Yeah, I don't think it's been. I mean, like, aside from like a moment in hip hop in the late '80s, early '90s with like Public Enemy and that whole thing, and also like the Stop the Violence movement in hip hop, but like there hasn't been a lot of politics in music for I guess Rage Against the Machine too in that kind of era, that early '90s, right?
But we're still playing "Killing in the Name of" now. Well, actually, wait a minute. No, it was Trump that used Rage Against the Machine.
He did? Wait, what?
Yeah, there's some blowback.
Yeah, he's been playing some pretty wild tunes. I think they played like fucking the Titanic theme song at the Trump rally in DC. Like, they're just running out of ideas.
But wait, to go back to this Rage Against the Machine, that song "Killing in the Name of," right? The lyrics start with "Some of those that work forces are the same that burn crosses," which is like so, like ahead of its time, putting that in the like kind of consciousness of the youth. I feel like that's so like important right now to be thinking like that, right? As we have been seeing, like, a lot of police are white supremacists. A lot of police are anti Black Lives Matter protesters, but enabling other protesters, as we saw on television last week. So I mean, it's that's the importance of political music. Like, we learned that from a young age as teenagers listening to Rage Against the Machine. So then when it comes back and we start thinking about police killing Black people, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's what Zach De La Rocha was talking about when I was 12 years old.
Yeah, and we can rewind it even further. Bob Marley, man. Bob Marley, Peter Tosh. Forget about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the like focus that I had when I was going to protest across the country last year was like really paying attention to what kind of music people were playing, and like what the protesters were identifying with. Unfortunately, I did not hear that much rave music. I mean, I heard like a percolator track a lot, like old school, like, 90s house music they would play for sure. But mostly I heard a lot of like hip hop and like songs like, the Cupid Shuffle, songs that
The
like
Cupid Shuffle.
yeah.
Yo, we actually have these 2 videos that you recorded of the Cupid Shuffle. Let me check which numbers they are so we can bring those up, because I was so curious when I was looking at what you sent. Like, which ones are they? It's 320. Mike, it's video 3200 that she sent, and 3035. I think those are the Cupid Shuffle video. Yeah, let's check this out. Where is this video taken?
In New York. And this was like a really beautiful protest that they organized that was 24 hours long. It was in response to the New York Autonomous Zone getting shut down. And they had like all these activities throughout the city, and there was this spontaneous dance party that happened in Washington Square Park, and it was the first time that like I got to actually like dance in a crowd during this pandemic, and it felt so nice. But right after this video happened, there was that crazy like police kidnapping where they like snatched one of these protesters into an unmarked van and started arresting like dozens of people, and it got really ugly really fast. So I just remember that this dance as being like this really like beautiful moment before it just like switched and got really crazy. And that's the thing, right? Like, you never know when it's gonna just suddenly like change.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing about protests. And like, in a way, it's what makes it so ironic about the storming of the Capitol, right? It's like almost like that's what you want to see police acting with protesters. Obviously not when they're storming the Capitol, but just like not starting violence, not like actually attacking them, which is what it felt like we saw all summer long, was the police engaging and, starting the violence with protesters rather than the other way around.
Yeah, there's some interesting reporting about this, about how, DC police's response was like kind of an overcorrection to the criticism that they got earlier in the summer for going too hard, and then they like pulled back, and then they were unprepared when it was like actually violent.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard a lot of different commentary on that. Let's pin talking about that a little more for later. I want to keep going on, talk a little more about music at these protests, because I think that's positive and interesting. And also just like, I didn't moving to upstate New York and not getting really to go to any big city protests. Like I went to a couple in Kingston, like little marches by me, which is a teeny little city, but like you were on the front lines of a number of different protests and autonomous zones over the summer. So, like, what was that? What was it like being there in Seattle? What was it like being there in Philadelphia in these autonomous zones? And,
Yeah, so it's super interesting because like I first came across the idea of an autonomous zone through rave culture. Like, if you read like sort of like the theory behind autonomous zones, it's often mentioned in the context of like rave, because raves are like a utopian space that are sort of autonomous from mainstream society, and we create our own values and imagine like a different kind of future. So when I heard that there was like a real autonomous zone happening in Seattle, I was like, holy shit, I really want to go. And then one of my friends, who was also a music journalist, wrote to me, and he was like, there's a lot of interesting similarities between like a music festival and what's going on here at the Chop. Like nobody really wants to talk about it because it's a little bit taboo to like compare a protest to a music festival. But he was like, the vibe really reminds me of like going to a festival, camping out in your tent, and like partying and like meeting all these really interesting people and having like, sort of radical conversations. So I was like, that's interesting. Like, let
Totally.
me go see what's going on. So I went there, and it kind of felt like I showed up to the party when the beautiful, like positive, sort of like celebratory part was kind of winding down, and it was becoming the sort of like darker end of the night. Like everyone was a little bit fucked up on drugs, and like, like kind of like the aftermath of it. But that was still really, I think, good to see, because I saw a lot of really, like, I don't know, really beautiful things still happening. Like, I think that autonomous zones get a lot of flack for being these like violent Antifa spaces. Like, oh my God, like, they're so chaotic. But I saw like so much beautiful like sharing, and like a lot of like queer people coming forward, and like really like helping the homeless people that were living there.
We got a plur vibe going on.
Totally.
Yeah.
It was like real rave culture values. And even when people were like overdosing and stuff, it was a very sort of like harm reduction mentality, rather than like shaming and stigmatizing, or like
Were there a lot of overdoses?
Oh yeah, like I definitely saw one the first night that I got there.
This is in Seattle?
Yeah.
So this is like homeless folks with addiction issues who are there, or this is that who was
I
overdosing?
think it was both homeless folks / just like young kids with like opiate addiction issues.
I mean, yeah, Pacific Northwest, it's big
Totally.
problems.
Yeah.
So it allowed me to kind of envision like how can we treat these issues differently than like calling the cops and, trying to arrest people for doing drugs. And obviously it was really messy, and sometimes like I think things got a little bit too chaotic, but I don't know, like obviously this is also new. I don't expect people to suddenly like come up with the perfect solution.
Well, it sounds like the perfect situation for something like Dance Safe, someone who's out there with Narcan, knows how to administer it. We've done that at festivals where people are like, especially in the Pacific Northwest in Canada, they're like, hey, you know what? No judgment. Bring your drugs here. We'll test your drugs. You're going to be taking, if you're, these people choosing to take drugs, at least bring them here and test them to make sure that they don't have, opioids, fentanyl in it and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think another interesting thread that I also thought about is how, like, a lot of the organizers of these autonomous zones were discouraging people from doing drugs. They were saying, you're here to be, like, an activist, and we need you to be sober and, like, present to do this work. And it kind of, like, made me think about how different it seem to be from like what I think of as like Woodstock or like the 70s political movements, where like drugs were so part of the counterculture. But I think now, the way that like young people view drugs is really different. And maybe because we saw like the opiate epidemic, and we saw like what happened with crack in the 90s, and it's just like not as glamorous to be like fucked up and be like, oh, fuck the system, like I think that sobriety now is seen as like a really political stance, which feels very new to me, and it's cool.
For sure. I mean, it feels like the 60s and this era's psychedelic era was sort of about expanding consciousness and a search for, something deeper within the mind. That doesn't seem like to be the narrative with opioids.
No, it's numbing the pain versus expanding the mind, right?
Yeah, very
but
much so.
It's interesting. Like the 60s psychedelic experimentation has now come back as mainstream, psychedelic research, and even recreational legalization of psilocybin mushrooms in places like Colorado is legalized now. Is any other state legalized now? Did Oregon legalize?
Yeah, Oregon actually was the only state that managed to create a path for medical psilocybin. Everything's kind of still being worked out, like how it's going to work and who's going to be able to administer it. But it's a medical model, which means that it's a therapy model. And I think that's a huge difference also between what's happening now and back then. Like, I've been talking to a lot of really smart like researchers and doctors about the work that they're doing and how they're training other doctors how to use psychedelics. And some of them are like doing psychedelics for the first time and like learning like, what is ketamine? Like, what does ketamine feel like? I'm just like, wow.
Yeah, I read a couple of your ketamine articles. They were at the top of your website, and there's some interesting and weird stuff going on there, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool that all these doctors are kind of figuring out what ravers have always been figuring it out on their own, you know?
I think we were, the ravers are out there. They're not as interested in maybe at a rave in microdosing. Maybe we want to macro dose if you're out and about. But it seems like a lot of these things just have a completely different properties and medicinal values when microdose, for sure. I mean, it's such a strange. We're in such a strange place as a society in America when it comes to pharmaceuticals to help with people's pain or help with the mind. I guess my only worry is I think it's great to move into these other substances and away from some of the, like moving towards psilocybin or towards ketamine or MDMA, and away from some of these bizarre brand names, that doctors are prescribing people with. But I also wonder if ultimately the problem isn't getting fixed that caused people to want to take these substances in the first place.
Well,
and also, I don't mean like maybe PST of a veteran or something. I just mean that like the problem that causes the pain in the first place, like where can we look there? And is there a way to do it without substance?
I mean, therapy can help, but I also think that like a lot of what I've read about psychedelic research is that it is looked at more as like, single treatments or less often treatments, not taking a pill every day to deal with depression or addiction.
I'm all for people going in like rewiring with mushrooms or LSD or something. These are life, usually positive, big positive sweeps or sweeps of where the people are discovering a newfound spirituality or love of the arts or appreciation of love itself, very positive.
What is funny to go back to what we were saying about counterculture not embracing drugs in the way it did in the 60s is like now like the psychedelics and that whole thing is kind of like the main is like
more like the mainstream.
That's the establishment, not even the mainstream. It's like the establishment. It's like legal and being studied like by the establishment, whereas the counterculture is like no drugs. How did that happen?
It's like when your kids, you listen to like whatever. If we listen to like house music, or Alma's your daughter Alma's probably gonna grow up listening to like chamber music or something.
Folk guitar, no
right.
Electronics.
Well, I don't know. I'm really interested in creating like a new sort of vein of rave culture centered around psychedelics and weed. I guess like 2 years ago, I started this party called Weed Rave that was really inspired by all of the like crazy weed parties that I was going to in California when weed just became legal. And I was like, these parties are really fun. There's like a lot of free weed going on, but the music kind of sucks. So let me bring in the girls and like, get some really hot DJs and like create a party centered around weed. And it was really kind of like an experiment in the beginning because a lot of people were like, oh, am I going to get too fucked up and just like stare at a wall for like the whole party?
With that Cali weed, you got to watch out.
Yeah. And I was really worried that people would like lose their minds or like freak out or anything like that. But what I realized is that actually like weed is a really, really social substance. And people like even the act of like passing a joint like makes you kind of like interact with strangers in a different way. And people act really goofy and like, it's hard to like be snooty to somebody when you're really stoned. So,
totally.
People were just like really, really friendly to strangers. And there's a lot of like community, like people taking care of each other and being like, are you okay? Which I guess, people do on ecstasy too, but it's a different vibe with weed. And
much heavier vibe.
Yeah, and I'm really excited for all the shroom stuff that's happening now in California. Like my dream when this pandemic is over is to throw a shroom rave.
That would be insane.
Yeah,
for sure.
right?
Or as we like to call it, a rave.
I mean, psychedelics are such a. Go ahead, Michelle. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, like, so much of rave culture is like centered around like ecstasy or cocaine or drinking, and I'm really interested in psychedelic parties. I think that they are a different like vibe, you know. I mean, it's not like it's a new thing. Obviously, like the Loft had a ton of acid. There's like No Way Back in Detroit. That's like a super psychedelic party. And like I think there's some interesting sort of connections between like, you know, the way that psychedelics are really durational and raves are really durational, and you kind of like lose your ego into this sense of universality. Like it just really kind of like fits.
It really does. No, I mean psychedelics. Like, I mean, for me, the first time I went to a rave, I was on LSD. So it was like a very integrated experience, and has continued to kind of be integrated with that experience of like that unity and that like losing yourself that you talk about is so helpful when you're out there just dancing like no one is watching, right? That's like the whole goal, right? We always say about raves, dance like no one's watching. And when you're tripping, it just happens.
Right. And it's also kind of like a really comfortable space to like experiment and understand these substances. You know, I think that like it's really interesting what your gateway into psychedelics or drugs can be. And I think like rave culture was really formative to like my understanding of drugs. And also just like all of my beliefs honestly have been really shaped by the rave community. Like I kind of came of age with like the American rave scene, you know. I started my first job as like a music journalist for Vice, and like just kind of became like woke through the rave scene, like understood like what it meant to be like a marginalized person, and like the values of that, you know, of that kind of community through like witnessing the rise of like the New York / like Bushwick queer rave scene. So basically my whole like life, like lens through which I understand life has been like super shaped by rave culture. And now I'm in like a different sort of like psychedelic scene, you know, and like trying to sort of explain to people like that rave culture is not just about like hedonism and like getting really fucked up and like escaping from reality and not giving a shit, but that it's also like really political and meaningful.
I mean, I feel like it's gotten so commercialized, both because of EDM and also because of like the European Ibiza scene. You know, it's really took the values out of the rave over the last decade or so. But I think, you know, the underground continued to be there, but like a lot of people's introduction to electronic music was via those, either, you know, like Solomon, or you know,
there's still a fair amount
or
of that,
like EDM in the US, you know,
a
like,
fair amount of that plur vibe in the EDM scene, more so than in the bottle service Ibiza vibe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
look,
it was really interesting when we started Thump, which was Vice's electronic music channel. We started it in like 2013, I think. So right as like the EDM wave was like really cresting. And to be honest, I think that a lot of people at Vice like did not understand EDM. Like Vice was started by a bunch of like skater dudes who like listen to punk rock, and they're just like, what is this fucking bullshit, you know?
Yeah. Hey, so, look, we're house DJs, been into this shit since the 90s, and we looked at EDM and we're like, what the fuck is this bullshit?
Oh,
you know?
for sure. Yeah, exactly. So
I'll speak for myself.
Yeah, no, totally. A lot of people within the rave underground were also like, fuck this. But we were covering a lot of like Miami Music Week, Steve Aoki, Avicii, like all that kind of stuff. Some of it was like, you know, they thought that that's what would make them money, I guess, as a vertical.
There's a
but
lot of
I
money
always
with those.
said,
names.
like, there's a way to cover this shit in an interesting way. Like, all because it's kind of like, you know, Vegas, like very like spectacle oriented, doesn't mean that it has to be like so like I don't know, I just felt like there's a lot of condescension to it, but like it was a really interesting phenomenon. Like this was the first time that like American mainstream youth culture was like getting onboarded into rave, you know?
That's very
and
true.
I guess like the whole thing about how like this is like a gateway for people who like maybe go to like EDC and then 2 years later are listening to someone like IO, and then 2 years later from that are listening to like really hard techno. And I think if you actually go to some of these like really crazy EDM festivals, you will hear sounds that are really experimental, you know? Like it's not all just like brain fart, like dumbass music. Like there's a lot of like really interesting sounds happening and experiments happening within the EDM space too. So I've always been like the high-low thing. Like we can do both. We can cover the fucking Bushwick Ravers. We can cover the European like time warp festivals, and we can cover what's going on in Miami with the EDM too, with Avicii. I mean, Avicii's drug problems. Let's talk about that. You know, let's talk about addiction and mental health within the EDM scene.
Yeah. I think that's. I respect that you're finding kind of something of interest, and you're keeping an open mind when approaching that stuff. And I think that that's exactly how it should be done. I'm with that. But can I pump the brakes and rewind for a sec? So we're looking here at a weed raid that you threw, and I'm thinking about like, okay, so we go to a weed rave. If you get too high, all right, you can have like, you know, a glass of water, sit down, a little timeout, maybe take a CBD and just calm the fuck down for a little bit. All right, cool. But now I'm thinking back to like my youth, because like I also agree with your sentiments earlier that you were shaped by the rave. I definitely was. I know Eli was. He started even a few years. You were sneaking out of your mom's house at like 13.
14.
So
15.
for 14. So for sure, you are like at this point now more rave than not rave.
That's very true.
As a human being.
Guys, I'm 24 years deep on the rave, right?
For
24.
sure. So like we're right there with you. But when I think back to the old school 90s rave days when there was different people, and look, you know, there were people going sober for sure, but a lot of people were taking drugs. A lot of people, and some people were more in this vibe. They took that. And then there was the trippers. The trippers all kind of had their own agenda, but the trippers were like psychedelic. They were like psychonauts. You know what I mean? They were like, had a sense of where they were going. They knew where they had been, and they knew it's like some sort of way to mitigate anxiety, because let's not get it twisted. When we're talking about using psilocybin as a therapy, this is under, you know, controlled conditions where there's someone to guide you.
You have a guide,
not
or
to
yeah,
say that you don't have a guide when you're out there at a rave, somebody that's just kind of keeping watch, but like a psychedelic party where everyone's taking mushrooms, plus like the people that never taken it before, there's going to be some freakouts. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I haven't thrown the shroom rave yet, but I would definitely want someone like Zendo Project, which works with MAPS, one of the leading psychedelic organizations, to specifically deal with like difficult experiences. And I think that also rethinking like the aesthetic and the sort of environment of a rave is really important to like make it feel really comfortable. I've been thinking a lot about like rave aesthetics and how, you know, the whole Berghain 90s industrial, like post-apocalyptic, like aesthetic used to be seen as like very futuristic and cyberpunk, but to me it feels a little bit archaic, like old school now. You know, when I think of what I want my rave future to look like, I want it to be in a fucking forest. I want it to be in a fucking desert. Like I still want it to have like really cool cool lights and like tech and stuff like that. But to me, the future is a bio future. It's an eco rave, you know? And I think like creating those kinds of settings that are really like nurturing feeling and maybe more feminine also, allows people to feel more comfortable and to sort of relax, and having like spaces like at my weed rave I always have an indica room, which is an ambient room.
Well, that's like the chill out room, like traditionally,
Yeah,
you know? Yeah.
And one last interesting tidbit. I was talking to a researcher who is a psychiatrist at an ER hospital, at an ER room in a hospital, and she also is a raver, and she used to go to the Shelter, which was this club run by the Collective. You guys know it. And she said that her experiences in the chill out room taught her how to deal with people in the ER. Like she would sit on the ground with them, which is not something that doctors do. She would sit on the ground with them like she was in a chill out room and like talk to them heart to heart the way that you would on ecstasy in the chill out room. And I was like, that's so cool.
That is hilarious.
This was such an important part of the rave too, though. Like, was like you would be kind of brought in by older people, by more experienced people who, if you were having a freak out or something was wrong, they would be able to talk you through it. Like you'd find your friend who brought you there, or your friend, or somebody, you know, or somebody you met when you're freaking out would be like, yo, I've been through this, or like, you know, I've dealt with this and I can help you through that. That's something that I think was so important. And, you know, because it was this underground culture that you kind of had to be brought to, was possible, right? So I that's something I think that's so valuable about just underground culture in general, and like how raves were, that potentially gets lost when it gets more commercialized. That like, if you can just buy a ticket and go, just because you like a DJ that's playing, you maybe don't know how you're supposed to act or like what the expectations are. And there's a power in having this kind of collective expectation.
Especially when the DJ is Colonel Sanders from KFC.
Yo, if I was tripping and that happened, that would fuck my whole shit up.
You know what's messed up? That whole thing was like designed to totally stimulate people that were high too. Like the graphics they use with the, you know, eyes expanding. And
did you hear about this, Michelle, at Ultra Miami a few years ago? They had like Colonel Sanders from KFC.
Yeah,
like,
KFC was like one of the big sponsors.
It was like an ad, you know, an ad in between DJ sets, but it was actually Colonel Sanders came out and DJ'd. It's fucked.
But even at those EDM festivals, I still think the EDM bros are still like, yo, you okay, man? You want some water? Like, they're still looking out for each other.
Yeah, that's what I meant about the
love and blur. That's true. And, you know, like, for me, like, really going on, performing on Holy Ship and just, like, going on Holy Ship for I think we went 5 years in a row, like, really opened up my mind to that community and how connected it was to the original spirit of the rave. Like, Ship Fam was, like, a real community and really had those same values of looking out for each other and, like, you know, checking somebody that's like, yo, this is not how you act here. Like, this is about, you know, respect and loving the music. And that happens. I saw that so many times there, and it was really,
I have to agree,
really cool. And like that kind of, and, you know, hanging out and performing with different EDM DJs on Holy Shit kind of changed my whole perspective on everything. So that was cool. And you know, I think it often takes seeing the other side, like getting to know people on with different perspectives and ideas, you know, both in music and in the world, like general world around us, can be so important.
And, you know, I think like maybe this is a good seg to talk about Playgrave.
Playgrave. Oh, dude.
Because
I'm living in Miami, Michelle, so
nonstop Playgrave, 24/7.
Real.
Have there been a lot of Playgraves like going on there?
We're open.
In Miami, they're legal, right? You can have them.
I don't know if you can have a Playgrave,
but isn't any rave one a Playgrave?
Exactly. Everything's open here. Everything's been open. There was a brief period where things were closed, and now it's just been open. And then there's like, you know, places like Fort Lauderdale or Hollywood, Florida. There's like, they got an advertisement that plays in the evening around the news, and they're like, come to Hollywood. We're open for business.
Yeah. Well, I heard about Miami Playgraves because of a lot of like sort of social media call outs of DJs who are flying to Florida to play at these parties. And
it's like a hub between here and Tulum as well.
Totally. And I just think it's so interesting / sad that, you know, the rave plur ethos has been totally inverted by this pandemic, and communities or this idea of caring for your community at a rave like no longer really applies when going to a rave means that you're actually like a super spreader. Like, raves are no longer seen as like community spaces. They're seen as like hedonistic, like individual, like selfish spaces.
Yes. That's
and
very,
that's
very
really
well
sad because I think rave has become a really dirty word in this pandemic. Like if you read the New York Post, there are all these like articles about parties that are happening that like this one was like super infamous. Like my homie actually threw this party and he did not expect thousands of people to pull up like this, but like so many people are just dying for some kind of release. I think that they just flock to it. Got a lot of really negative press because people were obviously like not really.
Is that just air guitar?
But
our girl Lauren Flax was actually on. Maybe I can find this on IG. Our girl Lauren Flax was on one of the CBS local news in New York talking about this. They had like a whole story on CBS News, not about this one, but more recently, because like over Halloween and from Halloween till now, there's been tons and tons of illegal parties in New York. People are just doing it. Like there's to the point where I think it's gone now because people kept reporting it because they got called out. The COVID DJs NYC Instagram account, which was just calling out DJs for playing parties. Yeah. And then they had the COVID DJs Florida account as well that kind of spun off that. They
got COVID DJs Fort Lauderdale.
COVID DJs Fort Lauderdale, right?
But look, we're speaking a minute ago about like the problem that leads to the drug use in the first place, right? And like putting an emphasis on some sort of support systems in our society and like the need for that. I mean, that can be applied. I mean, I understand from the industry's standpoint, venue owners, promoters, people that have, need income, it kind of like I feel like we can almost point the finger to the government for not being able to help support people financially during this period of time. And in terms of like younger people that are just feeling so cooped up and fatigued by the pandemic, I mean, look at the way that, once again, point the finger. I mean, I feel like we can point the finger at our government because the way that this whole thing was handled. I mean, not to say that the rest of the world is open and raving freely right now.
I mean, some countries are. If you go to like fucking Asia, you can party indoors, no mask.
Well, where?
In Taipei. My homegirl's working door at a club, and she sends me the craziest videos of people just partying, no mask.
Is that because that there's no threat of a pandemic, or just because it's lawless?
No, because the government actually managed to sort of like.
You can rave indoors with no mask in Miami, no problem.
Right. But yeah, I mean, the way that I feel about like the plague rave thing is like, I don't think that raves should be happening right now, especially indoors. But I also don't think that shaming DJs for playing these parties or shaming people for going to them really works. I feel the same way about drugs, right? I don't think that you can shame someone to like not do drugs for whatever reason, especially if they're doing it because of like some kind of really deep pain or like loneliness or like some kind of, they're trying to cope with something. And like, I think that shaming someone just makes someone like feel like they need to go deeper underground and keep it a secret. And like, it's the same, like I said, it's the same thing with drugs and rape. So it's not, people have kind of misinterpreted my stance a little bit to be like, oh, she doesn't think shaming works, she's pro party. But no, I'm actually saying that we need to find new ways of like helping people to deal with this crisis. And also, if you are going to go to a party, let's talk about harm reduction, right? Like, how do we create a new culture around raving that is a little bit safer? Because I did go to a lot of like parties over the summer when they were outdoors and like you could mask up and stuff. And I felt like there was a really sort of like interesting gradation of like different parties like actually taking precautions. Like some parties, especially like the old school house music, like dancer type parties, were very, very community and safety oriented.
Always, yeah.
and they would be like handing out masks and like actually going around the dance floor and reminding people to distance and stuff. Whereas
That's
like
dope.
if you go to like a really sort of like hedonistic, like, you know, like the parties that did not give a shit about any safety, like those were just like totally maskless, we don't give a shit, everyone partying. So there's a difference, I think, between different plague raves, and the media obviously doesn't understand that.
I also think like, well, the people you talk about who are like this old school house crowd in New York, it's a very unique one that's there. I mean, there's smaller pockets around the country, but that's a very unique thing. And these are people who grew up clubbing because of the community. You know, that was like a big part of it. The community was built around that in the 90s, you know? And so I think there's a lot of that. And even before, a lot of those people were even taught by the folks who were going to the loft originally. So this is passing down this culture that I think as it got more mainstream, like I was talking about before, kind of maybe got lost a little bit, this ability to pass down this caringness about other people who are there to party with you. And like, to go back to the plague rave thing, here's the COVID DJs,
Fort Lauderdale.
And you know, this is like they posted this, of course. You know, but what kind of alarmed me about this is a lot of the people, they're posting private messages and stuff in their stories. A lot of people who are getting mad at them for like, you know, posting these videos of the parties and calling out DJs and calling out the parties. You know, a lot of these people are COVID denier folks, you know, who are also kind of taking a very kind of, I guess, right-wing stance, you know, MAGA stance about this whole thing. Like, this is my freedom. I'm going to party. Fuck the liberals for telling me that I can't party. So I think it's like, in a scary way, it's now intertwined, right? So like, when you then see like these kind of weird like MAGA Burning Man folks, as you call them, Michelle, which I love, like right here.
I think a lot of these people have already been sick too. They've
but
already
like,
had
then
COVID.
how are you going to deny that COVID exists, right? How are you going to deny masks if you've already been sick?
Or maybe without a... Yeah, I guess that's a very good point.
You know what? Like, I see both sides of this. Like, I really do. Like, I do feel like if it's legal in Miami, you know, to have parties and you can be outside and do it, and you want to do that, that's your choice, right? And like, as long as you are a little bit considerate and saying like, well, maybe if I got exposed, I'm not going to go to the supermarket. I'm not going to do these things. You have to be a little bit like thinking about other people. But if you're doing that and going to the parties and like, this is my priority, I need a party, and so I'm going to think about the other sacrifices.
Right.
I'm down with that. But once you're getting on planes, once you're like out doing normal things and partying, I think that's just like inconsiderate. And that's like a very selfish kind of way of looking at this whole thing. Like, we are in the end all in this together, like as a country, regardless of what people want us to think. And like being exposed to COVID and then going to the supermarket and getting an older person sick or anybody sick is really like, you know, is selfish and irresponsible. So like, look, party if you want, but like, think about that privilege that you have to party, and then use that to guide the rest of your life. I'm down for that, right?
And Michelle, you nailed it with this idea of culture, a new culture around harm reduction. If that is your decision, I think you totally nailed it.
Yeah.
But it goes back to this, like, you know, I'm not going to judge somebody. Everybody has their own reasons for doing things, and if you're considerate and thoughtful, you can do what you need to do for yourself. I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, it's also really interesting what you said, Eli, about how this is playing out on a national level, like these issues. I feel like we're kind of at this really interesting, like, not intersection, but like a split in the road or something. In terms of like, as we, you know, move from the Trump to the Biden era, and people are calling for national unity at the time when it just feels like everything is so splintered and polarized. Like, what is the solution to reaching out to people who don't think the same way as you? Is it to shame, to dox, and to deplatform? Or are there other ways to kind of moving through this? I don't have the answer, but as usual, I think it's very interesting how rave culture acts as a sort of like a microcosm of what's going on, I mean, in the zeitgeist.
I think like, you know, I feel like I want to believe, and like, as I've gone through, you know, I'm currently getting my master's degree in climate science and policy, and like thinking about this policy stuff and like the politics, it really, I kind of went into this, like, how can I bring like a more education about the climate and the policy into music, right? But the more I think about it, it's not policy that's going to change people's minds. We're so polarized politically. Culture is what we need in order to bring people together. And I think you mentioned that a little earlier regarding like protest music and how music can bring people together in ways without thinking about why they're together. And that's almost what's like so like perverse about a lot of this partying, like, in Tulum, and like this like thoughtless, just like I'm gonna do whatever I want for myself, because it's like the flip side. Like you want to see this culture bringing positive change, but like just going to a party without thinking about the consequences in a time like this is a negative change, right? Like we need to think about how music can be that positive force. And I agree with you. It's not about shaming. Like that's not going to solve anything, but it's like, how can we as the artists, musicians, and DJs be using this force for good in these times, right? And come out of this time with what we've learned and using it for good. And obviously there's a lot of people who are not thinking like that and don't care and never will. But I do feel like those of us who are, there's more and more people who think like that. And COVID was a chance to like double down and learn more about that side. And there's a lot of folks who are going to come out of this pushing the more progressive ideas of what dance music was built on and where it should and can go moving out of this pandemic. I hope.
Yeah. My prediction is that once COVID ends, everybody is going to be fucking partying. Party culture is going to become the main form of culture, and it's going to be really interesting to see like the explosion of nightlife again into like completely like a new era, Like there are going to be so many interesting new party collectives, and just like I don't know. I'm gonna spend. I'm just holding on right now, like being super healthy and like working out and like doing a lot of like really good girl shit. Because like once this is over, I'm gonna fucking party for like a year. Period.
Oh my goodness. I agree. I think that after this, there's going to be a big boom in entertainment and community-driven events. But I was listening to NPR and on a drive to go. I bought some speakers for all the live stream. And on my way up, I was listening to a story, and I have to go look it up. But basically, some expert who was like looking at the time frames of previous pandemics through history, and basically the idea there is looking at those examples. This is going to be going on for a while. Not only the length of time that the pandemic that we'll have to be cautious, and before we can really return to full on sweating on each other, spitting in each other's mouths like good old days. It seems, and like that there's this the period of the pandemic itself, and then there's the economical and the societal and mental and all this other. Let me look up this book. It was really interesting. Hold on a second.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. We can always look to history. There's been pandemics before, but we're in such a different time now. And things do feel like they move faster in the world that we're currently in. And, I mean, we'll see. We'll see if people want to get the vaccine. We'll see if the vaccine works. We're going to know a lot more, I think, in a few months. Hopefully by the summer, it's like there's going to be legal outdoor events around the world. And I think that's the time to really make that happen, right? Is responsible legal outdoor parties. And I've heard that New York is going to be issuing a ton of licenses for outdoor events over the summer. They're going to be like it's going to be free for a lot of these licenses that were really expensive or like much cheaper, and like really encouraging community organized gatherings, which I think is potential for an incredible summer. And I mean, I think we saw last summer as rates went so far down, it was safe to party with masks on responsibly. We weren't seeing huge spikes in cases until the weather got bad and people went inside and started acting the same way, if not more irresponsibly. Right.
Here it is, guys. Sorry, it's called. The guy's name is Nicholas Christakis, and the book's called Apollo's Arrow: The Profound and Enduring Impact of Coronavirus on the Way We Live. We could put the link in there.
Well, he was ready. He wrote that book in a few months that it's already out now. He's like, oh, coronavirus? Right? I'm going to write the book.
He's been working on it. He's in. He's in on it.
I was just gonna say, I also read a really there is some hopeful news, right? Like I read an interesting study that was done in Europe. I think it was in Germany, where they did like a controlled experiment and they let a bunch of people into a indoor concert with like a designated drinking area where you could take your mask off. And they did like corona tests, like a rapid test before you went into the party, and they were able to successfully throw a concert with no infections.
Yeah, no, there's a number of these. There was one in Germany and in Spain most recently. Primavera Sound Festival, I think, helped organize.
That's the one I was thinking of. Sorry.
Yeah. In Barcelona, they did a 1,000-person event where basically you had to take a test. I think. Let me look at this article. It's 1,000 people, social distanced, and they basically had to pass an antigen screening, and then got to go to this event, and there was no COVID passed. So it's that's one of the rapid tests. And I DJ'd a party up here, in upstate New York where they did a double testing situation. It was a festival like outside of a summer camp. There were like maybe 300-400 people. And they did the same thing. You had to do a mail-in test, and then you did an antigen test at the entrance. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, you're really, I think, doing it that way is pretty much safe. I think they're finding in these studies. And the only question with that, though, then it gets expensive, right? And who's going to pay for that? And then it becomes pretty elitist to be able to party, right? And then you're bringing out actually some of these problems we're having with equity and representation further to the forefront instead of actually dealing with those issues, right? It's like, how do you be more inclusive and party safe? It's hard.
For sure. I think that's totally spot on. I've also heard of like really elitist Silicon Valley type parties that are doing COVID testing at the door so that they can like allow all these rich millionaires to party and do like 2CB together. Then at the same time, you have all these like, completely lawless like play graves with like a lot of, broke art kids or whatever. And it just, this pandemic is such an amplifier of like class and economic differences.
Any tip to any muggers outside of nightclubs in the future? Just look for people with yellow noses. Bam.
What?
Right? Pink noses. Just look for pink noses. That's my advice.
Oh, you mean because they like took the thing?
Because it means that they've taken 2CB and that shit's really expensive.
Wait, 2CB is pink?
I thought you were the expert. Which is probably like the world's biggest prank by whoever the chemist is. He's like, I'm going to make this stuff really expensive and pink. It's like they've been like sniffing Smarties or something.
What's the weirdest drug that you guys have done recently or ever?
Weirdest? Oh, I suppose once upon a time I tried salvia. That was strange. That was really weird.
Did you have a good experience? I feel like most people have really scary experience.
I was still in college, and I tried with a water bong, and then with I was like, someone was like, "Did you feel anything?" And I was like, "No." And then next thing I know, it was me hiding around the other side of the couch, peering out, looking back at myself.
Oh my
and I was like, this is weird.
I want to take this moment to shout out the chat room because we got a bunch of people watching on Twitch. Shout out everybody on Twitch watching. Everybody in the chat room, what's the weirdest drug that you've taken? Let us know.
That's a weird one.
We'll shout it out.
There are like 2,000 people watching right now. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's Lost Resort does a great job. We get some front page placement sometimes, and it really bumps us up. So shout out everybody seeing us from that front page placement. It's Schmoozing with Soul Clap, and we're here with journalist Michelle Lhooq talking about drugs.
What are Russian eye drops, Spacey Beans?
Spacey Beans. What are Russian eye? Let us know. What are those? What are Russian eye drops? We got some other people talking about 2CB in there. That's one of the weirder ones I've taken. But also, like people who make 2CB also make other weird variations of like putting other chemical bonds together to do similar kind of things to 2CB. I remember something called like Dalt or like B-Dalt or something like that someone gave me at Burning Man. Like, because you get all these weird scientists, chemist folks at Burning Man who are like, here, try this weird chemical, compound I've made.
Research
Yeah.
chemicals,
Research
analogs,
drugs.
Yeah, that's what mine was going to be. I tried this thing called 5-MeO PCP at one of these summer raves that I went to, and it was kind of like ketamine but different. And yeah, it's definitely like a huge thing now, these research chemicals. Oh, another one that I really like is I've been getting into like the alt cannabinoids, like besides THC and CBD, there are all these other cannabinoids in weed that are really fun. And TBN, CBG, Delta
TBN,
8, like all this shit.
Wait. Go slower. TBN, TB.
No, CBN, like CBD, but CBN.
I know CBS.
I would like, but this was like called designer drugs. This was the old name for this stuff, right? It was all designer drugs because they were just like design, and that's like I guess ecstasy was MDMA was kind of originally thought of like that.
Yeah. Yo, Mike Ill in the chat room, right? LBC. He just moved to Long Beach.
Which I think is an interesting one because nitrous is something that's been in the rave scene for a long time.
Even before the rave scene, like laughing gas has been around since like the 1800s. Like there's books about like.
I feel like it's trending again, maybe more in the like Silicon Valley scene. Did you hear about the Zappos guy, the Zappos founder?
Zappos, the shoes?
I heard he died, yeah.
He died, and it was apparently because he was like doing mad fucking whippets like in his garage and like exploded himself.
I don't know if it works that way.
That
like
made a lot
like
of people
attached
be like,
to a
what is
tank or something?
nitrous? Because nobody had ever even heard of nitrous like in the mainstream, So a lot of people were suddenly hitting me up being like, what is nitrous?
What? So really?
I mean, honestly, I'm going to be real. Like that got me through a month of the first month of quarantine was getting a cracker and a bunch of whippets. And like, we actually had a friend of ours organized these quarantinis like every Saturday, started out as a few people on Zoom and then grew, we were just, have drinks. And then someone was like, hey, I got my whippet cracker. And they were like, you can just get it on Amazon.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow. So we got any sex shop. Some fun with that, but you don't want to go too deep on that. But just two more points on whippets.
You don't want to go too deep on anything.
No, it's true. But like that was invented in 1799. There's a chemist inventor named Humphrey Davy who started experimenting with nitrous oxide as laughing gas. My friend who's really into it has a book that's like poetry and cartoons about nitrous. From the 18th and 19th centuries.
No way.
Wild, yeah. And I mean, so there's just like a historically funny drug to do. But I will say on the flip side, it's totally terrible for the environment. You cannot recycle these canisters. You're just throwing these out. It's just like metal that has to get thrown out. So look, if you're going to do nitrous, buy a tank and recycle your balloons so you don't use all these metal canisters. That's all I'm saying.
God, it's hilarious. Yo, Dan Bain in the chat room. Nitrous funded many a rave. $5, yo.
Yep.
I also got to ask Kraft Cheese, what is Sananga? Sananga. I don't know that one.
Yeah.
But I didn't hear these. I want to hear these marijuana analogs too.
Yeah, we had a question about that. About the wait, what was the question? Yeah, how do you get these alternate cannabinoids? Are they oils? How are they taken?
And also, what does it feel like differently?
I mean, they all are different, right? And I think that's really cool because we're just starting to understand how complex cannabis is as a plant. Obviously, like CBD had like a huge moment and everyone was really obsessed with it. But here's my take on CBD. I think it's kind of a scam. Well, not really. I mean, CBD obviously works really well for like, cancer patients or people who are taking it in like really high doses. But like when you do like a little CBD tincture and you do like a little bit on your tongue, like it doesn't really have that much of an effect. And I think there are other cannabinoids like CBG and CBN you can get them as a tincture as well. And for some reason, they just hit harder for me. Like they have the same feeling as CBD, but like it's just like a body high, like a body relaxation. And then there's this other one called THCV that I'm really obsessed with as well, because apparently it makes you skinny. It reduces your appetite.
I know THCA is like the active ingredient in like the that's a very what's the brand, something in Sons or Brothers or something. It's a popular California brand. Anyway, they do like medicinal, and the CBDA is more like THCA is more like CBD until you mix it with a warm beverage, and then it's activated, and then it becomes more like a THC. But I beg to differ on the CBD front, because there's a brand down here that I love. It's called Just CBD. I wish they would sponsor me. They make the best sugar-free gummy bears. I buy them all the time, and if I'm having trouble sleeping, 2 bears start to get drowsy. 3 bears, I'm falling asleep quickly. 4 bears, and
you're straight up
4 to 5 bears starts to feel like fetal position.
Oh, fun! I'm glad that you have CBD that works for you. I'm not going to knock CBD too hard. Another brand that I'm going to recommend and shout out right now is called Level. They specifically focus on like alternative cannabinoids in their little tablets. Someone told me that they know a lot of people like in Silicon Valley and San Francisco who like love taking like 2 tabs of like some weird cannabinoid and like going dancing. That's like their ecstasy.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Yeah. Bring up craft cheese. Thank you. Sananga is made from the root of the bark of the Tabernet Montana Sananoho shrub. It's a traditional eye medicine. It's beneficial for inner and outer vision. Okay. It's great for a bunch of causes, yada, yada, yada. But is it do you get high? Is this the inner and outer vision? So this is a psychedelic. Fire eye drops from the Amazon. Just squeeze a frog, bro. Squeeze a frog right in there. I've got a plant that I got at the nursery here, botanical nursery at the Center for Subtropical Affairs, which is like a venue and also a nursery. And it is called the Angel Trumpet. And it's beautiful. It's got these long trumpet flowers that point down towards the ground. But he's like, watch it. This is very psychedelic bad. Psychedelic bad.
Oh, yeah. Isn't
I'm
that
like, what? You think I'm going to like just start munching leaves in the garden or something? Like, but he's like, yeah, watch it. Don't let the dog eat it. Don't eat it. Yep. Watch out. Don't eat your plants.
I know this one. They have this angel's trumpet all over California. I think it's native to Cali, and people are always like, oh, yeah, you can trip on that, but be careful because it's really poisonous.
Yeah, poisonous, a.k.a. you're going to trip your cojones. No.
Yeah.
Now, who are these first? I would love to, like, find the stories of these first humans to, like, try all these things.
Probably a raver.
Yeah, some Neanderthal raver was like rolling up with a binky.
I mean, like, well,
rock binky, stone.
When you start talking about like the like medicinal qualities of psychedelics, like this goes back, hundreds, if not thousands of years. Once you start doing the understanding and reading up on the research that's been done about psychedelics, there's a lot of work and understanding, and like this foundation was laid by indigenous folks in the Americas, especially, but I'm sure all over the world. But over here in like Mexico, Central America, Northern South America is all there's a rich tradition of using psychedelics as medicine, right? Like literally as medicine for people, and
totally, and also interestingly pairing the psychedelic experience with music. Like I've been researching a little bit of like ayahuasca music and like this sort of chantings. People like Maria Sabina, who is this like Mexican shaman who had like really beautiful chants that she would sing during ayahuasca rituals, and I think there's a really, really interesting connection between like the role that music plays during the trip to guide you.
Well, look, chanting of shaman during psychedelic rituals, is all about repetition, can be, and that is right there with electronic music.
Exactly.
For
Like,
sure.
I've definitely been like super deep in a trip at Berghain or something and being like, wow, I feel like I'm in some primal ritual right now.
Casey
Yeah,
Michael in the chat is saying Icaros is what the ayahuasca chants are called.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
I wanted to rewind back to Raskin Music in the chat room that says Angel Trumpet. I got blind. Bro, did you eat your flower? Did he eat it? Did you actually try it? I want to know.
I'm curious about this Icaros, and we actually here I found a YouTube video. Let's bring up this Icaros music for a sec. I'm gonna give that to Mike the Ledge, producer Mike. I want to hear what this sounds like. I mean, this is and also like when I've been also reading about like more contemporary studies and healings of using psychedelics. There is the guide or like the medical professional, and there's still like music and like comfort is considered
Gracias, Padre.
this process,
Gracias,
even in the
Padre.
West, even in the
Gracias,
US
Padre.
now,
Gracias,
experimenting on
Padre.
this.
Gracias, Padre. Gracias, Padre. Estamos en sus manos.
He said we are in the hands of the Mother and Father.
Y rezo a las 4 direcciones universales para iniciar esta ceremonia musical y abrir ese espacio sagrado de conexión, sanación y liberación. Un encuentro con nuestros ancestros, nuestras raíces y nuestra herencia milenaria. Gracias. Gracias, Pachacamac. Gracias, Pachamama. Límpiennos, cúrennos y sánennos. A todos los enfermos, a todos los oprimidos, límpienlos, cúrenlos y sánenlos. Libérenlos.
Man, the jungle must sound so
Gracias, Madre
wild
Tierra.
if you're
Gracias por tus plantas, por su
intoxicated
oxígeno,
with ayahuasca.
por sus medicinas, por el alimento que nos proveen día a día. Gracias. Gracias al agua que bebemos,
Who
al
just
aire
cleared
que
his throat?
respiramos,
The shaman?
al fuego que nos cobija.
No, that was me. I don't know.
Oh.
It's kinda weird. I don't know what's going on.
Shaman's clearing his
Gracias
throat.
al
He's getting
día y
ready.
a la noche, al sol, a la luna y a las estrellas. Gracias, ayahuasca, curandera, sanadora, poderosa, prodigiosa.
Chat room's cracking me up right now. Craft cheese ass.
Y que estas
Raskin, are you still
bendiciones
blind from the
vayan para todos
trumpet?
nuestros seres
Mike
queridos.
Hill says I don't think he would reply to that.
Y que esta noche, de todo corazón, cada uno de
that's
ustedes encuentre su renacimiento, su iluminación, su camino y sus respuestas.
Casey,
Gracias.
Michael, I think you're spot on. I think this is just getting ready. There we go. Frankie Knuckles' whistle song.
But it's. I think we get a good idea of this,
It's
Mike. I think
beautiful.
we can move on and chat a little more. I mean, it's beautiful, but then it's like it reminds me of how like there's been this kind of perversion of the sound with like pan flutes and tech house.
Totally.
And, like, that's what they're listening to in the room with their fucking masks off while they're
Appropriating
spreading COVID.
Shamanic anthems, yeah.
Like it's been perverted, right? Like a lot of this shamanic, like ayahuasca ideals, you know,
Wait,
without respect. Like it's tough, you know, it's tough, like, because I do feel like it's powerful and like it opens people's minds, and a lot of the time it can lead to positive change. But I feel like it's often almost abused, like by people's privilege and by like rich white people who aren't necessarily respecting or acknowledging or you know, giving back to those cultures that we're taking this from. So I think it's important to acknowledge it, right? Like I feel like that's often what's you know, not done, is like acknowledging where we get these things from.
Totally. So the question becomes like, how do you incorporate without appropriating? Because, you know, we were talking about how I want to throw a shroom rave one day, and I would love to be able to bring in an element of like, you know, these kinds of chantings and music that have been proven to work to guide a trip. But I don't want to tread into this fucking like burner ass, like flute shamanic house shit either, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's an interesting kind of quandary.
You know, I mean, there's indigenous folks who are involved in, you know, in the culture, and who are trying to spread this in like in a modern, connected way. And I think that's a way of doing it. Like, you know, like we had these musicians called A Tribe Called Red on the show around Thanksgiving here, just to kind of talk about like the indigenous experience. They're Canadian but are indigenous, and you know, to talk about their experience in dance music and how like their understandings and their community and like their messages can then be translated and done in a way that's authentic and educational in a way, you know, and I mean, because they're coming from this place already, so it's not appropriation. So I'm sure there are people who are connected that you could then, you know, collaborate with, that would be able to, you know, who are dealing with how do you share this knowledge in a way that's authentic and powerful, but responsible.
Totally. I'm just like, I have this fantasy, this vision of like having some Icaros on like a techno dance floor. I think that would be so sick.
Right, and what's also like claiming that back from the fucking Tulum pan flute burners, right? It's gotta be reclaimed back to the people who created it.
Or what, like native Peruvian shaman?
No, I'm not. I'm saying like it's got to be in context, right? I'm saying there are native people who are connected to the culture, people from the history from that, who are
like
also
the way Tribe Called Red. Could
yeah, you know,
there's
these folks got to exist. So I think it's just doing some.
Well, look, whether it's Native American chants or the pan flute of like, you know, Mayan ancestry or African drums or even gospel music. I mean, there's power to these these types of music. You know, I mean, there's power to in all music, but there's something particular to these things that, you know, lends itself to appropriation, you know, because people are tapping in. This is the content that vibrates in a particular way that I think gets a reaction, you know. But agreed. I mean, you know, we're not supposed to misuse these powers.
Yeah. Craft Cheese in the chat saying, I have a degree in classics, been studying Tantra yoga. They have a lot of this info and practices of equality and enrichment. Yeah. I mean, I think yoga is another interesting one. Like there's yoga practitioners and teachers who are tapped into a lot of the traditional stuff and honoring it. And then there's others that are just kind of appropriating it for their own.
Oh my God, can I just say that I always have a yoga session at my weed rave party. And nice. At the one in New York, we had, you know, the artist Graffiti. She live scored it. And then we had like a really avant-garde like dance instructor teach it. And it was probably the trippiest yoga session I've ever been to, but people were down. They did yoga fully on the dance floor, just like as the DJ in the other room was like blasting house music. Like it was just
that's
like
great. You know who's really involved in these two worlds? When you mention it like that, is Marcus Wyatt from LA.
Oh yeah.
He is, you know, very involved in the yoga and like shamanic world, and also in the house music world. I think both in very authentic ways, and he could be somebody to connect.
I'm pretty sure he's sober though, maybe.
Yeah, No, I mean that's a theme that keeps coming up in your work as well, Michelle. I will connect you with Marcus. He's amazing.
Totally. I mean, let's shift rave culture towards a modality of healing and like health rather than it always being about destruction and escapism, which I think, hedonism has its own purpose as well. And it can be very powerful as a sort of form of catharsis and release. But there's this whole other side of like raving. I'm the girl who's always doing yoga poses on the dance floor, And I don't know. I think it's cool to be able to create an environment where when you leave the rave, you feel really like healthy and replenished. But I also I don't want it to be I hate those like sober daybreaker, 5 a.m. raves. You know what I'm talking about? That shit is whack, dude. That shit is like, let us make you into a more productive corporate worker. That's their mentality. Very much about still fitting into the capitalist mind frame. I'm not down with that shit.
Yo, but we are children of the rave, so we have the privilege of being free in our mind and our expression, whereas a lot of the corporate world is buttoned up real tight, man. So if they can get up and they want to wake up and they want to freak out sober in the mornings before they go sit in an office all day, I mean, could be worse, I suppose.
Well, look, and I've got to say, my favorite partying is waking up at 4 or 5 a.m. and going to the after party. So
totally, that's the river hack.
Yeah. You missed the doo-doo hour.
I love that. But to go back to what you were saying, I think that hedonism, as you get older, there's other forms of hedonism other than just pure partying, right? It's how you eat food, how you socialize with your friends, how you enjoy things in different ways, how you work out, how you participate with yoga or other spiritual practices can all be connected and hedonistic. And I think as you get older, you start really exploring and valuing those things. And it's how do you then translate that into something that can be enjoyed by a wider range of people? As part of this question.
Right. To me, I think rave is more of an ethos than a specific sort of, type of party. It's more about the sort of mentality and the sense of community that you're bringing, which is why I really need to really stress that we need to reclaim this word rave, because if you look at the media right now, rave is really, it's a dirty word, and they're calling things raves that are not raves. They're calling any kind of shitty party that people are throwing in the pandemic and infecting tons of people. They're just oh, it's a rave, it's a rave, it's a rave. And it's just oh, dude.
No, it's really not, right? It sucks.
But the 10 o'clock news always did that, going back to hard what was it? Hardline, or what was the famous interview with Barbara Walters?
Yeah. That was great. Because first of all, at first the news was going to these raves and no one was drinking. Everybody, you had energy
smart
drinks,
smoothies.
Smart drinks, the earliest smart drinks. This is great. Kids are dancing all night and not doing alcohol. And so that was initially in the early mid 90s. And then all of a sudden they realized that everybody was taking ecstasy. And it became this, there was this big expose, I think, like Charlie was saying on Frontline or one of these shows. Yeah. And that was it.
Barbara Walters.
And similarly in the UK, then there was a moment when rave became a dirty word once it was realized that everybody was on this drug. I mean, that was a big part of with us with Rave
60
the Vote.
minutes, Kelly P with the correction.
60 minutes. But this Rave the Vote initiative that we did is using, at first there were some people on the team we shouldn't call it Rave the Vote because rave maybe has a negative connotation. But ultimately that's what it was, right? It's DJs playing dance music, electronic music, connected genres, and using that for positive action and coming together. And that's what rave is. And I think we can continue to reclaim that, but also plur, peace, love, unity, respect is the centerpiece of all this, right? As corny as it can be and thought of, that's the message, right? It's how you talk about the loft and it's love is the message, right? That was what Mancuso brought to this. Well, Raves brought to this peace, love, unity, respect. That's the heart of it. And if we can always push that, and remind people of that, that can maybe help.
Yeah, I love what you guys were doing with Rave the Vote. Do you want to like tell us a little bit more about what that was? It was a live stream, right? And then you got people to kind of sign up to vote through that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
give it
for
to
those
me.
yeah, for those, I mean, for those people who are just hearing about it for the first time, so like we organized last year. It was originally going to be a lot like an in-person tour around swing states to get college kids and young people to register to vote. Had a bunch of big DJs who had signed on. We were going to try to get a tour bus and just go around the Midwest, but ultimately having it move online, we ended up with a great partnership with Lost Resort, who helped us organize it. We had a whole team. Everybody was all excited because people didn't have projects to work on during that first part of COVID, and like so many people got involved and excited and helped us make it happen and make it a reality. And it was broadcast here on Lost Resort TV, and there were like 40, 50 DJs that participated in 4 different episodes. And because of that, because it was virtual, because it was happening on Twitch, people could then just click the link and go and register like immediately. So I think it ended up being much more powerful because it was virtual. So, I mean, that's like, we know like young people helped swing this election and will continue to help swing elections. And it's just like educating and encouraging young people to the power that they have as voters and our responsibility that we have in the U.S. as voters, both for ourselves and also for the people who can't vote, people who've been disenfranchised, or the people who don't understand about it. So how do we spread that, and how do we take responsibility as ravers for voting and making change?
Yeah, no, I think the reason why that really resonated with me is because when I was on the protest trail over the summer and going to all these autonomous zones and protests, it kind of made me sad to not really see that many ravers out on the streets. Maybe there were secretly, and I just didn't recognize them or something. But like, I didn't really hear that much rave music, and when I did hear rave music, it was like older 90s kind of music. It didn't feel like connected to what's happening now. And so I was just like, where are my ravers at? Like, where are they? Like, I saw a lot of like punk kids. I saw a lot of like whatever, but I didn't see that many ravers. And I think, like rave has so much to add to this moment. Like throwing a rave is a means of community organization and mobilization. It is like one of the greatest ways to bring a group of people together. And even when I was in the New York Autonomous Zone, they were like really interested in throwing a rave at the zone because they were like, we need to bring people into this space and we would love to have a dance party. Mm-hmm. So sort of like figuring out how rave can like contribute to, the fight for social justice is, I think, one of the most, meaningful things that you can do right now as a community organizer, as a party promoter.
We need like a modern KLF resurgence.
Exactly.
Someone that represents those values and brings them in their artistic expression in the music too,
Funnily enough, that's what we're trying to do with our new album. So, I mean, hopefully we can have a little impact with that as well. With this idea of it's WTF, but it's World Transformation Force. So it's like shit is fucked, but we need to come together with music and with what we're doing to help change bring positive change. So we'll see. Hopefully it resonates. It's a test. It's a test in all these things we've been talking about, that if it actually works when we put that in our music.
For sure.
Wait, what's the new album?
So it's called WTF, World Transformation Force.
Oh, nice.
So it's a little bit cheesy, but it's also like really to the heart of what this is, what we're trying to say and accomplish. So yeah, it's exciting for us now. We've been working on it for a while and kind of formulating these ideas, and even like kind of getting deeper on them on Schmoozing on the show, like has helped us kind of crystallize and solidify and kind of learn from a lot of folks who are thinking about these things and trying to use the culture for positive change. So
yeah, man, I was gonna say, I love this show. I love that so many DJs are starting their own Twitch streams and podcasts and newsletters. And, as a journalist, I feel like sometimes like we've had too much of a monopoly on like, media. And now it's really cool to see like so many grassroots things happening where people who don't identify as journalists, like you guys, are doing work that I would associate with journalism, and like opening the field to like other types of, perspectives. It's cool.
Thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I want to, we're nearing the end of the show, and there's one thing I really want to cover that you segued nicely there, which is like you as an independent journalist have started utilizing this platform called Substack, which was recently, like I found out about it through you from, getting your newsletters and then signing up when you started the Substack, because it's always great to find ways you can directly support, the creators and artists that you whose work you admire or enjoy. And Substack is how you can do that with journalists or like newsletter writers now. So tell us a little bit about Substack and how you kind of see it being a possible way forward.
Yeah, for sure. So my Substack is called Rave New World. Mike, if you want to pull it up. It's called Rave New World, and I started it at the beginning of this pandemic because all these magazines were shutting down. And I'm very traumatized because I feel like I already lived through so many like layoffs in media, just like crash and burn. I saw so many amazing dance music websites, including Stomp, the one I worked for, but also like Fact Magazine and Fader and all these other places just kind of like collapsed in the last few years. And so when the pandemic started, I was like, fuck, like, what am I going to do? Okay, let's try this like Substack thing, which is fun.
So
like, sorry?
Mike just brought up one of your newsletters that we're going to talk about after you finish this.
illest headline of 2021. That's my prediction.
My God, thank you.
Going forward. That's going to be hard to top.
This is great. Oh, so this is your Substack page. So that's your latest one. Okay. So, but tell us, keep going. Sorry to interrupt.
But it's so funny, man. Like I was talking about this with another journalist. If someone had told me like 5 years ago that my primary means of journalism would be sending mass email, I would have been like, what are you talking about? Like literally what? Like this is the future of journalism, sending chain emails? But it's cool because I think that it allows creators who have a really strong voice and perspective to speak really intimately. And I find myself like getting a lot more feedback from my friends and for people like you who read it, compared to like when I wrote for like Vice and it would just be like throwing shit into the void, But with a newsletter, you really get the sense of like a community. On the other hand, I think that sort of the drawback is that it does create like a silo effect where everyone's just like in their own little corners and you don't have the same kind of feeling like 10 years ago when there would be like one article that everyone was talking about and reading, Right. And I think like right now there's just so many little corners of the world. And what really I think would be cool, and it already is kind of happening, is a lot of like newsletter writers or like Patreon creators are banding together to create more networks. To me, I think we need more of that collectivity, because if not, you still feel very like isolated and siloed. But the newsletter has been really cool because it's allowed me to just like work really quickly and do whatever I want. Like I wrote like a piece on pandemic rave culture, and then I wrote one about like the fucking, the MAGA Burning Man shit. And then I wrote about like all the crazy like shroom parties that I've been going to. It really allows me to just like do whatever I want without waiting for like the establishment to approve or understand like what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, it's great. It's been great to kind of see it develop firsthand. And to talk about your newsletter, this is the last thing I've been waiting. We've been waiting to talk about this the whole show. We're finally here. Mike, can you bring up my screen share, please? This is just the best. This is the best headlines. This is such a great way to start 2021. And look, this is like it's an interesting moment that we experienced last Wednesday. I mean, it's a astounding, astonishing, dumbfounding moment, but I can't say that I was that surprised as I watched it, right? Like you're just kind of like watching this, like it's in slow motion, like insane moment unfold in front of your eyes, like a car crash, right? That's what I was looking for. A car crash unfold in front of your eyes in slow motion. And like, you can't do anything about it, but it's happening. You see it happening. And I think you covered like how a lot of us were thinking with your title of this newsletter. DC was MAGA Burning Man, right? So like when you see these pictures of this guy
who literally calls himself a shaman.
Shaman.
That his like YouTube and his social media, he's really into psychedelics. He thinks of psychedelics as a way to like throw off like mainstream thought patterns and to like get into like really crazy QAnon conspiracies. This is the dark side of psychedelics, right? It can cause like really diluted thinking too.
Let's find this. I mean, we've all seen the memes of him. It's been maybe the best, probably like we're peak meme right now. This is like peak meme was this moment. And like, look, it's hard. Like, I don't want to make light of it in a lot of ways because it's like really horrifying to see these crazies taking over the Capitol and basically being allowed to walk in, by the police. And like, if anything illustrates, the importance of the Black Lives Matter movement and the importance of talking about these issues and police brutality and white supremacy in the police force and defunding the police and like how we can reimagine what policing is. This is like, for me was like, couldn't have illustrated it more clearly, seeing this juxtaposition of the summer versus this moment of these people just walking in, overpowering a too few police to take care of it and then just walking in and not even being arrested, leaving the Capitol, right? Just allowed to walk out.
We'll see as this thing unfolds exactly how it was orchestrated and how that we ended up with this result. It's just,
people are getting arrested now, to be fair, now after the fact, but like they could have just like, arrested them walking out and not had to chase them down and use all these resources to find people. Like what? Why didn't they do that? But I mean, let's go back to
everybody was like shaving they had these long beards. They shaved the beards.
Right.
Wait, no, go down. There's like a picture lower down that I like am obsessed with. This other guy who didn't really blow up as much, but his look was actually insane. Go down more. More. That guy. This guy.
So he's got the fur. He's got no shirt.
And then he stole this like police riot shield and bulletproof vest that he claims he found on the ground. And he was walking around with this staff.
He's MAGA. Yo, look, I got it. MAGA Moses.
Well, literally, I've done some research on this guy. And I found out this guy's father is an Orthodox Jewish rabbi in South Williamsburg.
No,
who is also a New York State Supreme Court judge. His father.
Yeah,
what?
I know. It's a little bit scary that these people are very connected to power. But thank you for the ticker tape, Mike. Subscribe to Rave New World. But yeah, I mean, I like what someone in your chat, Kelly, said about feeding into the attention economy, because that was what my sort of essay was really about, which is, these people pull up in these like insane looks because they are stunting for the gram. These are looks that are made to go viral on TikTok. And I think that what QAnon conspiracy theorists understand really well is that this is a meme war as much as it is like a political war. Like the culture wars are happening online. They're happening with like the attention economy and all of these looks.
Nice, Mike.
Good.
Got the arrow. Yeah, observe.
Yeah, that's like the connection to Burning Man too, that it's like about spectacle and it's about stunts. And I think that unfortunately, like stunting really works these days. And I don't know, I think that like another thing that I've learned from rave culture is that like spectacles have meaning and political purpose too. Like people automatically think that if it's Burning Man or if it's a costumey sort of spectacle, that it's meaningless and that it's dumb. But as we definitely learned through so many raves and so many parties, like spectacles are a really essential part of like the culture, they have a lot of meaning. So I don't know, to me, I think that like writing off these looks as like pure like clownery kind of like maybe misreads like how actually serious and dark this shit is.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I kind of preface it like it's like almost like we have to see the humor in it because it's so fucking dark, right? It's like, how do you survive something like that? How do you like deal with this? How do you think through this without taking a somewhat humorous look to like be able to process it? Because it is so profound, this moment. in our history.
What do you think's what's next?
Well, what's next is that we're gonna have a new president in 8 days. Amazing. What's next is that Democrats have control of the Senate and the House.
Is this the end of this kind of activity?
Oh no, definitely not.
I mean, that's what I'm saying.
I'm not an expert. I'm not a political pundit. I'm not a psychologist. I couldn't tell you what's next. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, I'm afraid of
for sure. But when it comes down to policy and our actual government and things like good things are going to happen the next 2 years. That is what I'm excited about. That is why I'm hopeful. That is the power of the people who came out and voted, of all of us who came out and voted for positive change and more progressive politics and policies.
But I think it's really important for people not to slack off just because we have a Dem in the White House, because we need to hold these people accountable to their fucking
Amen.
and make sure that they're not just like posting on pure representative politics. I think that like if you look at a lot of Biden's cabinet picks, he definitely like was playing to the idea of like, oh, the first woman or the first like person of color in this office. But like a lot of these people's like actual policies aren't that great. So like, let's not let them just like fool us by putting, you know, a woman in office and then it's okay. Like, no, these people actually have to follow through on the policy.
Yeah.
Right. No, for sure. I think it's true. We need to hold them accountable. I do think like quick shout out though, he did appoint the first Indigenous person to be to head the Department of the Interior, which is an incredible step. Just even if it's just symbolic, right? Like that is so important. And, you know, look, these are establishment folks. These are a lot of folks who were involved with the Obama administration. And that's like a point that, you know, a lot of people on the right or people who are more like further to the left get mad about, right? And like, of course, we need to acknowledge that. But the reality of our system is it is a two-party system, and it is built, you know, off these administrations that are people that have been involved in politics and have already built these power and have are connected on both sides, you know, both the corporate side and the government side. And it's fucked up. But right now it's the system that we have, and we can fight, you know, to build a better system. But the only way we're going to do that is by continuing to, you know, push progressive ideas, whatever party is pushing more progressive ideas. And ultimately, you know, we got to keep pushing that party. And that's the Democrats. That's what we have. Until we have something different, that's the reality. So I get really frustrated with folks, you know, who are, you know, look, I'm as progressive and liberal with my ideas as anybody, but you can't just say, fuck the system, because then we just end up with Trump, right? You know, that was a lot of people's solution. We got it. We're blowing it up. You know, even people on the left are like, okay, well, this is the moment when now we get to like, you know, break the system and we can move forward. No, you saw what happened. You know, he made so many people's lives worse. This administration made so many people's lives worse and the planet worse and so many different things. Already, look, the Democrats, one of the first bills they're going to pass is banning the federal death penalty. So, like, if you want small victories like that, then that's what we're going to get now, right? So there's moments to be hopeful, and instead of being upset and scared every day for what the next thing that's going to happen is, we can at least have small victories, you know, that hopefully lead to bigger victories. And yes, that doesn't mean we should be complacent, but let's like acknowledge, like, you know, that the two sides, maybe the lesser of two evils, but one is much more fucking evil than the other side.
Dude, that was a Jerry Springer final thought moment. That was incredible.
Yes.
What a flow, dude. Love it.
Also, we all need to push for weed legalization, because I think that's going to happen.
Yeah. No, for sure. This is going to happen with this administration. Most fucking definitely, dude. And not just weed legalization, but also criminal justice reform around weed criminalization, right? People who've been convicted of weed crimes need to be fucking freed from prison.
Yep.
Totally. It's really interesting how all of the weed money is also funding like COVID relief programs. You know, people are starting to see that there are a lot of benefits to legalizing. I mean, I think all drugs should be legal personally, but
I'm probably with you with that one.
Yeah. But yeah, let's legalize all plants.
Legalize plants. I'm all for that. You know, that's a big part of this. And also, you know, Kelly shouted out in the chat room, I just saw, you know, acknowledging it right here. We go. Recognizing that we must give the land back to the indigenous people to restore our climate. Like that's looking at the expertise and the knowledge of indigenous folks and the people who are here before us to help move all of us forward, and giving them that power is so important. So, hey, we're 2 hours in. That was a great schmooze, Michelle.
Great schmooze.
Yay! Thank
Legalize
you.
schmooze. Legalize schmoozing. Can we got bumper? We should need bumper stickers.
I love that. That's a good one. Yeah, it was so great to have you. Thank you so much for
Really
stopping in.
Yeah.
And yeah, for all you viewers, if you want to support Michelle, you want to read more, ravenewworld.substack.com. That is her newsletter right there at the bottom. At Michelle Lhooq on socials. Yeah, keep up the great work. Really.
Yeah, and Michelle, we'll send you our addresses if you want to just you can pop the wearable ketamine drips in the mail. You could send it to us after the show.
I'll just send you mad drugs in the mail, no problem.
If it's all legal, then we can finally do that, right?
Right.
Cool. Thanks again. You have any final thoughts you want to share with folks?
I think I've pretty much shared all of it, man. Just like I said, we all need to be, as ravers, like leaning into this moment right now and really activating our communities, reclaiming the rave, and making sure that, you know, it goes down in history as like, you know, a political mobilization effort rather than just pure escapism.
Yes.
Can we see you liquid before you go?
You mean like this?
That's funny.
Yes. Thanks again. We'll talk soon, Michelle.
Peace, Michelle.
Bye.
Thank you.
Dope, everybody in the chat room, thanks. This was a great participation. Let's keep trying to push for that. Talking about drug experiences. Yep. Fun and funny, and we appreciate you.
Go into your closet, take out your pants, cut them along the sides, put in the inserts, make your pants bigger. The next wave of rave is upon us.
Coming up next week on Schmoozing, we have Artelon, one of our faves. That'll be a fun homie schmooze.
Yeah.
And coming up on Thursday on our Twitch, twitch.tv/soulclapmusic, we got our EP release party. You get the first sneak peek of the EP on Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern time, and a live performance of the song Gardenin' by Life on Planets.
Yeah, check your inbox, Eli. We did a dress rehearsal earlier today, and It's going to be a dope little live show. For sure.
And yeah, we're streaming all the time on the Soul Clap channel these days. 2021 is the year of Soul Clap Twitch.
Brap.
So get it. Thank you all so much again. Thanks, Mike the Legend. Thanks, Johnny Mac. Thanks, Kenzie. And especially thanks, Michelle, for stopping in. We got our vinyl thoughts.
Yeah,
political, right?
We're keeping it on the political theme. We're going back in time to another greatly horrific, terrible moment, and that is Watergate and the evil Nixon. Gil Scott-Heron and Brian Jackson, Winter in America, is the album, and this song is called H2O Gate.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week. Peace.
Don't want to be involved in this one, man. This is gonna be a blues number. Yeah. But first I want to do a little bit of background on the blues and say what it is. Like there are 6 cardinal colors, and colors have always come to signify more than simply that particular shade, like redneck or got the blues. That's where you apply colors to something else, to come up with what it is you're trying to say. So there are 6 cardinal colors: yellow, red, orange, green, blue, and purple. And there are 3,000 shades. And if you take these 3,000 shades and divide them by 6, you'll come up with 500. Meaning there are at least 500 shades of the blues. For example, there's the I ain't got me no money blues. There is the I ain't got me no woman blues. There's the I ain't got me no money and I ain't got me no woman, which is the double blues. And for years it was thought that black people was the only one who could get the blues, so the blues hadn't come into no international type of fame. But lately we done had Frank Rizzo with the lie detector blues. We done had the United States government talking about the energy crisis blues. And we're gonna dedicate this next poem here to Spearhead X, the X second in command in terms of this country. And the poem is called H2O GATE Blues. And if H2O is still water and GATE is still gate, what we getting ready to deal on is the Watergate Blues. Let me see if I can dial this number right quick. Click. Click. I'm sorry. The government you have elected is inoperative. Click. Inoperative. Just how blind will America be? The world is on the edge of its seat, defeat on the horizon. Very surprising that we all could see the plot and still could not. Let me do that part again. Just how blind will America be? The world is on the edge of its seat, defeat on the horizon. Very surprising that we all could see the plot and claimed that we could not. Just how blind, America? Just as Vietnam exploded in the rice, snap, crackle, and pop could not stop people determined to be free. Just how blind will America be? The shock of a Vietnam defeat sent Republican donkeys scurrying down on Wall Street. And when the roll was called, it was Pepsi Cola and Phillips 66, Boeing, Dow, and Lockheed. Ask them what they're fighting for, and they'll never mention the economics of war. Ecological warfare, above all else, destroy the land. If we can't break the Asian will, we'll bomb the dikes and starve the man. America, the international Jekyll and Hyde, the land of 1,000 disguises, sneaks up on you but rarely surprises, plundering the Asian countryside in the name of Fu Manchu. Afraid of shoeless, undernourished Cambodians, while we strike big wheat bargains with Russia, our nuclear enemy. Just how blind, America? But tell me, who was around where Hale Boggs died? And what was the cause of LBJ's untimely demise? And what really happened to J. Edgar Hoover? The king is proud of Patrick Gray, while America's faith is drowning beneath that cesspool, Watergate. How long will the citizens sit and wait? It's looking like Europe in '38. Did they move to stop Hitler before it was too late? How long, America, before the consequences of keeping the school system segregated, allowing the press to be intimidated, watching the price of everything soar, and hearing complaints because the rich want more? It seems that Macbeth and not his lady went mad. We've let him eliminate the whole middle class. The dollar's the only thing we can't inflate, while the poor go on without a new minimum wage. But what really happened to J. Edgar Hoover? The king is proud of Patrick Gray, and there are those who say America's faith is drowning beneath that cesspool, Watergate. How much more evidence do the citizens need that the election was sabotaged by trickery and greed? And if this is so, and who we got didn't win, let's do the whole goddamn election over again. The obvious key to the whole charade would be to run down all of the games they played. Remember Dieter Beard and ITT, the slaughter of Attica, the CIA in Chile, knowing nothing about Allende at this time in the past, as I recollect. Augusta, Georgia, the nomination of Supreme Court Justice to head off the tapes, William Calley's executive interference in the image of John Wayne, Kent State, Jackson State, Southern Louisiana, hundreds of unauthorized bombing raids, the chaining and gagging of Bobby Seale. Somebody tell these Maryland governors to be for real. And we recall all of these events just to prove the water buggers in the Watergate wasn't no news. The thing that seems to justify all of our fears is that all this went down in the last 5 years. But tell me, what really happened to J. Edgar Hoover? The king is proud of Patrick Gray, while America's faith is drowning beneath that cesspool, Watergate. We leave America to ponder the image of justice from its new wave of leaders. Frank Rizzo, the high school graduate mayor of Philadelphia, whose ignorance is surpassed only by those who voted for him. Richard Daley, imperial Napoleonic mayor of Chicago, who took over from Al Capone and continues to implement the same tactics. George Wallace, Lester Maddox, Strom Thurmond, Ronald Reagan, an almost endless list that won't be missed when at last America is purged. And the silent White House with the James brothers once in command. But see the sauerkraut mafia men deserting the sinking White House ship and their mindless megalomaniac Ahab. McCord has blown, Mitchell has blown, no tap on my telephone. McCord has blown, Mitchell has blown, no tap on my telephone. Haldeman, Ehrlichman, Mitchell, and Dean, it follows a pattern if you dig what I mean. Haldeman, Ehrlichman, Mitchell, and Dean, it follows a pattern if you dig what I mean. And what are we left with now? Bumper stickers that say free the Watergate 500. Spy movies of the same name with a cast of thousands. And that ominous phrase that if Nixon knew, Ag knew. But Ag didn't know enough to stay out of jail. And what really happened to J. Edgar Hoover? The king is proud of Patrick Gray. And there are those who swear they've seen King Richard. King Richard, 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 King Richard. Beneath that cesspool, Watergate. 4 more years, 4 more years, 4 more years, 4 more years of that.